6,000 years ago, in the fertile valley between the Tigris and the Euphrates River in the area of Mesopotamia, the earliest cities arose, giving birth to civilization as we know it. And among these very first cities was the city of Uruk. The city Uruk was associated with the sky god Anu, who was the chief deity of the Sumerian pantheon. And to honor their sky god Anu, the people created a temple near the center of the city, and this temple was built on top of a structure known as a ziggurat. It towered above the city's fortification walls. My name is Kaylee, and in this video we are going to look into the birth of civilization, one of the oldest cities in the entire world and one of the biggest landmarks in this city, the Anu Ziggurat of Uruk. This video is sponsored by NordVPN, but as always, more on the sponsor later in the video. But before the first cities were constructed, the Sumerian people were of the belief that their gods lived on the distant rugged Zagros mountains, and these mountains were referred to as the Garden of the Gods, and they were visible from the flat river valley of Mesopotamia. The ancient Sumerians started to settle in the area now known as Uruk, although it is known in modern times as Warka, which is located in southern Iraq. From this location of Uruk, the Zagros mountains were visible, particularly on clear days. As the people started to construct their city, they were trying to find a way to honor their mountain-residing gods, and thus they started to create artificial human-made mountains. They were these sort of step-like pyramid structures known as ziggurats, to act as a physical bridge between the earth and the divine realm. The Sumerians believed that the gods would leave their homes in the high mountains to visit their temples situated on top of their ziggurats in the cities, to receive gifts that were left by the priests, so that the gods would bestow the people with good fortune. One thing that's always fascinated me about history is how people traveled. Merchants, diplomats, explorers, and how difficult it used to be to stay connected to home once you crossed a border. Ironically, traveling today is easier than ever, until you try to access the services you already pay for while you're abroad. That's why I use NordVPN when I travel. When I'm outside my home country, NordVPN lets me securely connect to a server back home, so I can access the same streaming platforms, news sites, and subscriptions I normally use, just like I never left. It's incredibly useful when you're researching, watching documentaries, or catching up on familiar content while on the move, whether that's from a hotel, an airport, or a cafe. NordVPN also helps keep your connection secure on public Wi-Fi, which is something historical travelers definitely didn't have to worry about, but you know, we do. I really appreciate how simple it is to use. One click, choose the country you need, and you're connected. If you travel, work remotely, or just want reliable access to your usual services wherever you are, you can get a great deal by going to nordvpn.com/Kaylee. That is nordvpn.com/Kaylee. Thank you to NordVPN for supporting the channel, and now let's get back into the video. For 5,000 years, humans lived in Uruk uninterrupted until the Euphrates River shifted course, which disrupted their trade networks, and it resulted in the disruption of their crucial irrigation. And thus the land deteriorated due to salt buildup on their agricultural land. Combine this with war and the rise of new city centers in the area, the people eventually had no choice but to leave Uruk around 638 CE, and the city was forgotten about until it was rediscovered 1,200 years later in 1849 by William Kenneth Loftus. The city of Uruk is comprised of two districts, the Iyana district and the Anu district, that started out as separate settlements, but these settlements merged and later on they formed the city of Uruk. Okay, so now you have a little bit of an understanding about the way the ancient Sumerians revered their gods and why they created these ziggurats and temples. So now it's time to look into what a ziggurat looks like and how they were made. A ziggurat is a raised platform or terrace with four sloping sides, looking somewhat like a chopped off pyramid. And because stone was rare on the plains of Mesopotamia, it wasn't used much as a construction material, so ziggurats were made up from mud bricks, just like the Egyptian mastabas that predate the pyramids. Ziggurats were not only a visual focal point of the city, they were symbolic as well. Seeing the ziggurat towering above the city, one would make the visual connection to the god or goddesses honored there and recognize the deity's political authority. The ziggurats were at the heart of the theocratic political system. A theocracy is a type of government where a god is recognized as ruler and the state officials operate on the god's behalf. So, as I explained earlier, the purpose of the ziggurat itself is to get the temple constructed at the top closer to the heavens, and thus the Mesopotamians believed that the ziggurats connected heaven and earth to act as a physical bridge between their deities and themselves. The Anu Ziggurat of Uruk, as the name kind of gives it away, was constructed in the Anu district. Only 2 structures are found here in the Anu district, and few remains of writing have been found here as well. The ziggurat terrace had been extended and raised at least 10 times over the ages, until it reached its final height of approximately 12 meters. The sides of the ziggurat were broad and sloping, broken up by recessed bands from top to bottom, as you can see here in this digital reconstruction. So there was only one way to get on top of this ziggurat, which was a steep stairway that led to a ramp that wrapped around the north end of the ziggurat. From there you could go 2 ways, straight ahead on another steeping stairway, or you could walk along the ramp towards the entrance of the White Temple at the top. So the shape of this ziggurat is not square or rectangular, but it's polygonal, and that is due to the many reconfigurations over the many years, and of course, the staircase. The surface area of the top of the terrace of this ziggurat measured approximately 45 by 50 meters, and radiocarbon dating has revealed that the ziggurat was constructed between 3517 BCE and 3358 BCE. The surface layer of the top was coated with bitumen, which is a naturally occurring highly viscous hydrocarbon, which they sourced from natural seeps along the Euphrates River. The bitumen in ancient times is in a way similar to what we use for road paving in modern times. But I hear you think, why would they coat the top of the terrace with bitumen? Well, it was a great way to waterproof things, and the Sumerians used it often for sealing boats and baskets and lining their water systems. If you think about the fact that the terrace of the ziggurat, the entire base where the White Temple was constructed on, was built from mud bricks, you kind of see why it was important for them to create this impenetrable layer on top to keep water from seeping into the base of the structure, which would have destroyed the ziggurat, and we don't want that. So on top of this bitumen layer, bricks were laid, which forms the firm and waterproof foundation for the temple on top of the ziggurat, known as the White Temple, which was built in dedication to the sky god Anu. So who was Anu, the sky god? He was the divine personification of the sky, often referred to as the father of the gods. He was the supreme god and the ancestor of all the other deities in the ancient Sumerian and Akkadian pantheon. He was also the supreme source of all authority for both the mortal rulers and the other gods. And in one of the texts that we have discovered from the ancient Sumerian time period, he is described as the one who contains the entire universe. So why is this temple referred to as the White Temple? Well, that has everything to do with the fact that it was entirely whitewashed from the inside and outside, which gave it an unparalleled brightness in strong sunlight. And in Mesopotamia, the sun is very strong and shines a lot. The White Temple was rectangular in shape, measuring 17.5 by 22.3 meters, and all of the corners were oriented to a cardinal point. The white plastered walls were divided by niches, multiple pedestals, and multiple staircases which led to the roof, and a probable second floor. The White Temple is a typical Uruk high temple with a 3-parts plan, known as a tripartite plan, which is a long rectangular central hall with rooms on either side. So the White Temple had 3 separate entrances, although none of the entrances faced the ziggurat's ramp directly. It was designed so that the people climbing up the ziggurat to get up to the temple would have to walk around it in a bent axis approach, being in awe of the bright and the grand facade and the powerful views before entering the sacred space. Upon entering the temple, they would have to turn 90 degrees to face the altar, which was a typical arrangement in ancient Near Eastern temples. The north, west, and east corner chambers of the temple contained staircases to get to the upper level, although the staircase in the north chamber seems to have been unfinished. The north end of the central hall had a dais, which, is a small podium, which was accessible by a small staircase, and on top of the dais was an altar with fire stains on its surface. Radiocarbon dating on the White Temple revealed that it was constructed between 3517 and 3358 BCE. Unfortunately, during the excavations, there were very few finds inside the White Temple, although archaeologists have uncovered 19 tablets of gypsum on the floor of the temple with cylinder seal impressions, which made them look like they were once used for temple accounting. Archaeologists also discovered a foundation deposit with leopard and lion bones in the eastern corner of the temple, which is something that we often see in ancient architecture, objects and bones being ritually buried in a foundation ceremony which was held before the temple would have been built, in hopes to, please the gods upon further construction. The archaeologists who conducted excavations at the White Temple estimate that it would have taken approximately 1,500 people, working an average of 10 hours a day for 5 years to have built the stone facing of the massive surface area on which the White Temple was eventually built. As you can imagine, religious belief may have inspired participation in constructing such a massive project, although there is quite a high chance that forced labor and possibly even slave labor was involved in the construction of the Anu Ziggurat and the White Temple as well. Outside of the White Temple, on the north face of the flat terrace on top of the ziggurat, the archaeologists discovered a huge pit measuring 2.2 by 2.7 meters, with traces of fire that you can see on the reconstruction here as well. Another remarkable find was a system of shallow bitumen-coated conduits which ran from the southeast and southwest terrace edges and entered the temple through the southeast and southwest doors. The archaeologists believed that liquids, like for instance water, would have flowed from the terrace all the way inside the temple to collect in a pit at the central hall of the temple. Another remarkable discovery the archaeologists made was an older structure made of stone under the northwest edge of the base of the ziggurat, which they promptly named the Stone Temple, which was built from limestone and bitumen on a podium of rammed earth and plastered with lime mortar. The Stone Temple was ritually destroyed in ancient times and covered with layers of clay and stone. Later on, it was excavated in ancient times and subsequently filled with mortar before the Anu Ziggurat was later constructed on top of it. Wait, did I just say excavated in ancient times? Well, yeah, I actually really did. Does that mean that the ancient Sumerians already carried out excavations more than 5,000 years ago? Yes, it does indeed mean that the ancient Sumerians were already conducting their own archaeological excavations, and the ancient Sumerians also housed their archaeological finds in museums, which is quite mind-blowing, right? As I mentioned earlier in the video, the sky god Anu is considered to be the ancestor of the major deities in the Sumerian pantheon, better known as the Anunnaki. So although the Anu Ziggurat of Uruk and its White Temple were constructed to honor the sky god Anu, the primary center of the Anunnaki religious following was in the Iana district of Uruk, which was a younger district than the Anu district, but it was historically significant as both writing and monumental public architecture seem to have emerged here. So the combination of these two developments, these being writing and monumental public architecture, places Uruk as arguably the first true city and thus the origins of civilization in human history. The oldest examples of cuneiform writing have been found here in the Iana district of Uruk. But Uruk was not only one of the very first cities, it was also the main force of urbanization and state formation as well. For 800 years between 4000 and 3200 BCE, the area saw a massive shift from small agricultural villages to a larger urban city center, with a full-time bureaucracy, military, and society. The Uruk period culture expanded by Sumerian traders and colonists had an effect on all of its surrounding people, who gradually evolved their own comparable competing economies and cultures. The city of Uruk reached its peak growth around 3100 BCE, with approximately 40,000 residents living inside the city. The legendary king Gilgamesh ruled Uruk some 400 years after the city reached its peak in the 27th century BCE. He was posthumously deified and he became a major figure in Sumerian legends during the later Akkadian rule. Gilgamesh was a major hero in ancient Mesopotamian mythology and the protagonist of the Epic of Gilgamesh, an epic poem written in Akkadian during the late 2nd millennium BCE. So the Akkadian Empire slowly took over the Sumerian civilization around 2334 BCE, which eventually united both civilizations under the new Akkadian rule. But after Uruk was annexed to the Akkadian Empire, it unfortunately started to go into decline. The Akkadian Empire existed approximately between 2334 and 2154 BCE, until it was destroyed by a combination of climate change and the Gutians, which were a mountain people in the area. Babylon was already a city under Akkadian rule, but it didn't become the center of its own empire until around 1894 BCE. The most famous Babylonian ruler was King Hammurabi, who created the first codes of law. Unfortunately, the city of Uruk lost its importance in the area around 2000 BCE during the struggles of the Babylonian Empire against the Elamites. The Elamite Empire parallels Sumerian history. It was part of the early urbanization, and its written records are only slightly younger than those found in Sumer. So it seems to be unclear if Uruk fell under the Elamite Empire or the Babylonian Empire after 2000 BCE, but the Babylonian Empire fell around 1595 BCE. Uruk, however, seems to have been continuously inhabited until the Arabic conquest of Iran between 633 and 638 CE, and it was abandoned after the Arabs took over the lands. As I mentioned earlier in this video, the British geologist, naturalist, explorer, and archaeologist named William Kenneth Loftus discovered the ancient Sumerian city of Uruk in 1849, and he led the first excavations in 1850 and 1854. Loftus is credited with the discovery of the famous clay cone wall and some tablets written in cuneiform script in Uruk. The most famous artifact discovered in Uruk, the modern-day city of Warka, is the Mask of Warka, which is often also referred to as the Lady of Uruk, or the Sumerian Mona Lisa. The mask dates from 3100 BCE, and it is one of the earliest depictions of a human face. It's a female face carved in alabaster, and it's most likely a depiction of the goddess Inanna, and it's approximately 20 centimeters tall. One thing I would like to point out is that the Mask of Warka was looted from the Iraq Museum during the fall of Baghdad in April of 2003. Thankfully, it was recovered and returned to the museum in September of 2003. It really would have been a shame if this ancient mask was lost forever, but I'm grateful that it is back on display at the museum where it belongs. So, I've told you all about the origins of our civilization, the very first, by historians, accepted city, the greatest monument in the city, the Anu Ziggurat of Uruk, and the White Temple on top to worship the god Anu, and I spoke briefly about the fall of the Sumerian Empire and the empires that preceded it. Which leaves me to ask of you, what do you think of Uruk? Do you agree that this was the place of the birth of civilization? What do you think of the Anu Ziggurat and its White Temple? And what do you think of the ancient Sumerian Empire? Let me know in the comments down below. And as you can see, we've got a completely new updated office space. I played Barbara the Builder, which I sometimes do. And I'm very happy with the way it looks. I'm very happy with the coloring, the blue and the wood. And I hope the audio is of better quality as well, because that's kind of why I did it. It looks good, but it also should make my sound quite a bit better. So fingers crossed for that. We still have the Klee and the YouTube plaque, but now we also have a cute little light. And yeah, who knows what the future will bring and what else I will do with my office space, because I sometimes do things. Yeah. But before I go and ask you to like this video, I would also like to mention that my videos are now on Spotify as well, so you can listen to them as podcasts, or you can watch the video on Spotify. It depends on what floats your boat. But yeah, you can podcast my videos on Spotify, which probably makes it a little bit easier for some as they drive their car and just want to listen. And yeah, merch still available. Go to the merch store, link in the description, or click one of the items that you see there. And I still want to invite you to join me in Turkey during the Ancient Wonders of Anatolia tour. We're going to Göbekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe, Sefer Tepe, Sayburç, the Bazda Caves, Haran, Sogmatar, Swaib, Mount Nemrut, a boat tour on the Euphrates, Cappadocia, and the underground city of Kaymakli. And we're ending the tour in Ankara, where we go to the capital of the Hittites, Hattusha. So yeah, link to that also in the description down below. And with that said, if you enjoyed watching, then don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you'd like to see more of these kind of videos, and click that bell icon if you want to be notified whenever I upload. If you haven't seen my previous videos yet, then click the card in the upper right corner or click one of the links in the description down below. Or yeah, click a video in the end card. I would also like to say a massive thank you to my patrons and my channel members. Thank you so much for supporting me, truly, it means the world to me. Like, really, I cannot put that into words. I know I don't give anything back because, I got ankylosing spondylitis, chronic migraines, and nerve damage, and there's only so little I can do in a day. And sometimes that's absolutely nothing, unfortunately. But it really means a lot to me that people just want to support my work for the sake of supporting it. And it really means a lot to me, so thank you. And yeah, I've blabbed enough. This was the first city that humans ever constructed, probably. Or at least the first, by historians, accepted city, and thus the birth of civilization. So yeah, I will see you in the next video. Okay, bye!